Welcome to part 2 of this tutorial on the workflow between Photoshop and After Effects. In part 1 we took a 3D model and styled it in Photoshop, then imported that 3D model, this coffee cup you see, into After Effects. Now we're going to add some detail, some steam for the coffee, and a liquid simulation of the coffee being poured into the cup, and a few other details to come up with our final product. So let's get started. Alright, so we done a quick RAM preview, so I'm going to show you what our camera animation is looking like so far. So it's looking pretty good. So let's move on and start putting our text in with the scene. And so first off, we're going to have it start here, and as we come in, we'll drop in some text right here. And we'll just put in got coffee, and let's put this on 2 separate lines, and mess with the line spacing a little bit. Let's pull it down just a bit. And then for the color for the text, let's change it over to let's go 624220, and then let's give it a little bit of a bevel and emboss. So let's go down to layer styles, bevel and emboss, and here you can play around with these for hours. I just like to let's soften it up just a bit. There we go, about 3.5. Just kind of smooths it out. And let's see here. Take the depth and actually turn it down a little bit. Maybe down to about 66%. So that's looking pretty good. And then under our effects and presets, let's just go grab a preset. I like being able to fade on word by word. It's a nice little effect. So take this and move it down to about right here, and we'll go into bridge, animate in, and fade up words. Give that a double click, and then so we'll see here as the animation comes in. It'll say got coffee. We've actually got to take that. If you press U, you can open up the animation, and we'll zoom in here a little bit more. Let's speed this up by quite a bit. So as you come in, got coffee pops up, sits for a second, and then we're going to move on to the next phrase. So before we do that, let's do a little linear wipe. So as the coffee cup moves, we can wipe the text off. So let's go to Effect, Transition, Linear Wipe, and let's change let's see our angle. I think it's about where we need it. No, it's come from the opposite side. Let's take this. Let's take the angle and rotate it around to 270, and feather it just a bit. And then let's set a keyframe for our transition. We want to start it right about here. Let's move this up so we can get a better view. And so as the camera starts moving, we're going to be at 21%, and then as it starts to come across the coffee cup, we got to keep the transition going. It's about right here, and as it gets a little bit close, it pulls all the way back there. We'll complete our transition. So let's see what that looks like. So it's almost like the coffee cup's kind of doing a little bit of racing. It seems like we're a bit behind, so press U to pull open that, and we'll pull back this pull back that middle keyframe. So it kind of erases the text. So now what I'm going to do is, since we've already got all that set up, save us a little bit of work, just hit Control D to duplicate that layer, and then let's slide it out a little bit to about here, and let's move this over, and we'll say we do for the second part of this phrase. So let's see, as it pulls in right there, we want to have it come on right when it gets to this keyframe here, and then we'll have it animate on and say we do. Now the problem is we've just got to adjust this. Got to adjust our linear wipe, and actually we're not going to do anything with that just yet. Let's pull it out of the way, and make sure we have it just set to 0, so we can see what we're doing. And we'll delete the rest. So it comes in and it says, right when it stops, right about here, we can have it starting. Have it say we do. Now we're going to have some coffee pouring into the cup right here. So what we're going to want to do is maybe just give this a little bit more time to have the coffee come in and pour. And then starting right here, as the coffee cup starts to move, right about here we're going to want to set our keyframe to 0%, and this time we're going to be wiping the coffee cup from the left to the right instead of the right to the left. So let's take our angle and we'll switch it back over to 90, and we've got our composition, or we've got our keyframe set to 0%. Now as it starts to move right here, let's take the linear wipe and start moving it. Let's see. Actually, I think we're going to have to move it quite a bit. Yeah, let's leave. So as it goes, about right here is where you want it to be. Actually, a little bit back. Let's make sure it's completely wiped off there. Now, one thing, it doesn't look like it starts until about 50%, so we're going to keep going till right here, right at the start. So it goes 47, and then it disappears as the coffee cup comes up. And we go to our final spot where the main message is, and so that stops right about here. Now I'm going to go ahead and just copy the text from the previous comp, so you don't have to watch me type a bunch of text in. Let's copy this and drop it in and put it right here. It's got like a nice little fade to it as it comes in. Alright, so our text is running over the coffee cup just a little bit, so what I'm going to do is just hit C and take this final keyframe for the camera and rotate it a little bit just to make it fit in the scene a little bit better, and that looks pretty good. So now we've got the camera movement set up. So let's do a quick RAM preview. So let's make a couple minor adjustments. First off, let's take all of our camera keyframes and let's do a little easy ease. We should have done this earlier, so it doesn't affect our transitions on the text, but hopefully it won't have too much of an effect. But it should just smooth out the animation a little bit. And let's see, as we move along here, I think it's actually working out really well. So we've got the text all set up, and we're moving our coffee cup around in 3D space. One last adjustment I might make here is just to push the copy out to the left just a little bit, so it fits a little bit better with the cup. And now let's do some So finishing touches, what we're going to do is create a pouring effect, like someone just dropped in a bunch of coffee right before you see it, and we're also going to create a little bit of steam coming up as the coffee's poured in, and then as you're viewing it from a top view. So let's go to Layer, New, Solid, and let's call this Pour, and then let's go take our color and change it to a very dark brown. Let's make it look like it's actual coffee being poured out of there. So 21130C works well, and we'll say OK. And then let's do our effect here. Let's go and do a CC glue stick. So it's under our CC glue gun. So it's under Effect, Generate CC glue gun. Drop that in there. Let's solo this layer, and we'll go to the very beginning here and zoom in just a bit in both spots. So let's set our brush position for our keyframe it up here. Let's make this our first spot. Go forward a little bit, have it come out, and down a little bit, and then go forward a little bit more and have it come down. So that's going to be the basic setup for our pour. Now let's go in and mess with some of the settings. Let's take our stroke width and go at 6.3, the density at 200, and the reflection, let's take that down to 20. We'll leave the strength at 100. Now for the paint style, let's make it wobbly. Kind of helps it with that pouring look. Let's take our wobble width to 6 and our wobble height down to 0.5. And our wobble speed we can take down to about 42. For the light, let's take the intensity up to about 127. And that should be good for that. So let's next, you can kind of see the way it pours. We really want to make those edges move a fair amount, so we're gonna add a roughen edges and then animate the evolution on that. So let's go up to stylize, effect stylize, roughen edges, and under that let's take our border up to 21.9. Our edge sharpness can be 2.75, and the scale, let's take that way up to about 600, and the complexity, let's maybe make that a 3. A lot of these you just learn by playing around with the different settings. Now let's keyframe our evolution right when it starts to pour, and then as it pours out we're going to want to keep that evolution going because it's going to pour and then stop. So let's take this up to 0.4, so you can see now as it pours it's still the edges are still moving, so it kind of makes it look like the liquid's still running through. So we've got all that set up. Now we're going to let it pour for just a little bit, and let's pull out our animation a little bit more. And then what we're going to do just to have it stop from coming from where the source is pouring, we're just going to do a quick linear wipe. So let's go Effect, Transition, Linear Wipe, and as you can see it's going to pull from here. So let's feather that out just a bit to about 30 pixels and set a keyframe for the transition complete right here, a little bit after 1 second, and then complete the animation down here. We want this to all happen fairly quickly. So comes in, it pours, and then it finishes. I think we should probably take the feather down a little bit on that and take our angle and turn it a little bit so it's not so sharp when it's when it finishes the transition. Now one other thing you can do in here is set some fractal noise on the actual on the liquid itself. So we can zoom in here a little bit and give it a little bit more realism, a little more contrast. If we go into Effect and generate, and actually if we go to effect, fractal noise, so it's effect, noise and gain, fractal noise, and what we can do on that is set it to a dynamic twist, and then as you can see, you kind of see a little bit of it almost gives it like a smoky feel there. And we'll take that blending mode and set it to multiply. Or actually, let's set it to screen. We can set it to soft light and turn the opacity down a little bit, and that'll kind of give it a bit more texture and make it look a little bit, give it a little bit more realism as it goes through. And we can also put a little evolution on that as well. So we'll take our evolution, set it here, and pull it out. Maybe go about 4. So then you get the edges moving, and you also get a little bit of movement on the inside. So that's our that's how you can set up the pour. Now let's unsolo this layer, and let's go to the spot where we are going to want to have the coffee pour come in. So it's about right here in our animation. Let's see. Yeah, right about here is where we want the coffee to start coming in. So let's grab our pouring effect. Now let's just move it up a little bit so it can come down. Let's take it off to the left a little bit. Now let's take it and drag it behind the coffee cup here. So now it looks as it sits there, it pours in. Now we've got to tighten up the coffee cup animation because it's happening. It's taking a little bit too long. So let's take it and press U to pull out all the keyframes. Grab them all. Hold Option as you or Alt on a PC as you to pull in all the effect, and because it's got to be finished by the time our camera takes off again. So let's pull it in here, and as you can see, it'll move a lot faster. We'll have it come in, pour, and then zoom out, and right as it moves off. So now that we've got the pour set up, let's set up our steam. So let's go up to Layer, New, Solid, and we'll just make this white, and we'll call this Steam. Say OK, and now let's take this layer and pre-compose it. So we'll go Layer, Pre-compose, and we can leave all attributes because it doesn't really have anything yet. And we'll double click on Steam, and then we'll go in and set up our steam. So let's go to Effect, Generate, or I'm sorry, Effect Simulation, CC Particle World, and let's turn off our floor. Let's take our birth rate down to 0.1. Take our longevity up to 1.5 seconds. Let's twirl down the producer and set our position in Z space to 2.73. Let's take our radius on the X axis and go 1.2, or I'm sorry, 0.2, and the Y, let's make that just 0.01, and we can leave the Z radius at 0.2. Let's twirl down the physics, and let's change this to vortex. Let's take the inherent velocity, and actually let's take the velocity first. Let's just make it 0.03, Let's take the inherent velocity and turn it down to, let's do a -5. Take our gravity, and since it's steam and it's going to be going against gravity, let's do a -0.2. And the resistance we can keep at 0, and the extra we can leave it at 0.5. So now let's start to make this look a little bit more like steam. And before we do that, let's just take our scene and let's pull it down so the steam's kind of starting right at the bottom of the comp. Alright, so let's go down to our particle, and let's change that to a faded sphere. And let's take our burst size and take it up to 5. And our depth size, we can keep that at 5 as well. And our max opacity, let's take that down to about 50%. And the size variation, let's take that down to about 30%. So for our color, it's going to be steam, so it's just going to be pretty much white. Right at the birth, I'm going to make it just a little bit darker shade of white, and then pretty much go clear white toward the top. So now you can kind of see what the steam's looking like. And I might take our sizes up a little bit more, and take our size variation down just so it doesn't look quite so piecey. And one other thing I like to do is apply a nice little blur to the whole thing. I think it kind of helps blend everything in a little bit more. So let's go to Effect, Blur, and Sharpen, Fast Blur, and let's just turn it up just to about 24, so that any type of edges, it just kind of helps soften them. And then you get a nice little steam effect. Let's pull the Z position up just a bit so it's not bleeding off the end of the comp. So let's get this steam dropped into our composition and put into place. So right as the steam comes in here, we're going to want to move our actual steam in place. We'll set it right about here, and let's do a couple things before we get too worried about that. Let's set the transfer mode by toggling the switches and selecting screen. Now let's take the opacity and bring it back quite a bit, because I know with steam you can't really see it too much. We just want to give it a kind of a barely there effect, and I'm just going to keep it actually just to cheat. I'm going to keep it actually on top of the cup, so when we actually move it forward and it's sitting on top of the coffee, when we're looking down, we don't have to get too fancy. If you want, you can drop this behind the cup and then transition them as you move the camera. So let's just move this down, move it down to right above the camera layer. So as the steam comes on, or as the coffee starts to pour, let's do a quick little opacity transition. Let's set it to 43 here, and then back it up. Actually, we'll move the 43 out and set the opacity down to 0. So right as it starts to pour, the steam starts to come up. Now you've got the steam going. And let's also keyframe the position. So hit P to bring up the position. Click your stopwatch, and we'll set that right with the position of when the camera starts to move. We'll slide it forward, and let's bring our position of the steam down and over so it moves with the camera. It's a pretty quick transition, but works very well. Now you've got the steam sitting over the top. Now as the text fades in, you've got the steam coming up as well. You can also, if you'd like, take the size. It's not going to hurt to take the scale, set a keyframe, and then as it's pulling in here, just maybe take the width and pull it out a little bit, and the height actually as well. Bring it up. That'll just give it a little bit more, make it a little bit wider. So let's save that. And we're almost done here. All we got to do is just add one more final touch. I like to put a little vignette around everything just to kind of take your focus and bring it in to everything around the comp. So let's go to layer, new, solid, and let's make sure this is black, and we'll call it, I just say VIG for vignette, and we'll click up here on your ellipse tool, and if you double click it, it's going to create a mask for you. Now let's go down to the mask options. Let's set it to subtract. Let's feather out the mask quite a bit, and then let's take our opacity and take it way down so it's not quite so much. And actually, I like to take the vignette and put it below the text so the text really stands out and just kind of gives you your tunnel vision, a little bit more with the actual graphics. Alright, so we got one more quick step to go. What we've got to do is put a little drop shadow on the coffee cup to make it look like it's actually sitting on this wood table. So to do that, let's actually duplicate the cup object and rename it to cup shadow. And drop it below the cup. Now let's give it an effect, perspective, drop shadow, and we will use shadow only for that. And let's zoom in so we can see what we're doing here. So you can see the shadow around the cup. Let's take the angle and drop it down to almost 180, and actually let's go right at 180. Then let's take the softness and bring it up, and take the distance out to about 10. And what I'm going to do to cover parts of this shadow to make it look like it's actually sitting on the table, I'm going to use a couple of linear wipes. So we'll take one and we'll set this to 0, and it's going to come up from the bottom. What we're going to do, pull it up a bit, feather it, so it makes it kind of sit right on the table. Now we're going to duplicate that effect, Control D, set this angle to 180, and we're going to get rid of this shadow that's coming up behind the cup. So let's set this to right at about 66%, so it kind of looks like we've just got that shadow going on there now. So now we're going to go through the entire animation and see how that affects our shadow, and we're going to adjust these two linear wipes accordingly to make it look like it has an actual drop shadow. So I've gone through each keyframe of the camera movement and adjusted the linear wipe to cover up however much or as little of the drop shadow as I needed to make it look realistic. So that was our final detail. Now we're ready for the final effect. So once again, this is Brian Cody for AE Tuts, and I hope this has helped demonstrate the workflow from Photoshop 3D to After Effects. Thanks.